other council member?
And it's preparing to live stream. So we're not live streaming just yet.
Okay.
Oh, and I just got a good reminder to move out of practice session to start the webinar. Okay, so our live stream is working, and we are good. So I know we're still waiting for Councilmember Marasco, but since we'll give it. Would you like to give it another minute, Chair Becker?
I wonder if he's still having trouble.
I haven't gotten any further text messages, so my guess is he's trying.
Let me see if he's an attendee. I have Dwight as an attendee. I'm going to promote him to panelist. I have Mike Marasco. I'm going to promote him to panelist. I have Marie. I'm going to promote her to.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, kids.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank
Dwight.
you.
Hello, Councilmember Marasco, you there?
I am. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the Clean Energy Alliance. It's December 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Member Insco,
Present.
Member Marasco,
Present.
Member Drucker,
Here.
Vice Chair Patel,
Here.
and Chair Becker.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move on to the flag salute. And what we've been doing is whoever city we were virtually, and we used to rotate cities, and we would have that council member lead the pledge. And we can change that all in January, but since it's a special meeting, we don't have anyone, I will go ahead and lead this for us. So ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag
United
Of the
States
United
of
States
America,
of America.
America,
to the
and to
republic
the
for
republic
which it
which
and
stands,
it
stands
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty and
justice.
justice
for all.
All right, very good. That brings us to an exciting time for CEA. We are now going to have an oath of office of City of Escondido board member and alternative board member. So I will turn this over to our clerk, I believe.
Thank you. Members Insco and Marasco, if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Tina
I, Mike
Insco,
Marasco,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
do solemnly
Yeah.
swear
that I will support and defend
that I
that I
will
will
support and
support
defend
and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the
the
Constitution of the
Constitution
United
United
States
States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the
and the
Constitution
Constitution of the State of
California
California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all
against
enemies,
all
foreign
enemies,
and
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will
that
bear
I will
faith
bear
and
true
allegiance
faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the
to the
Constitution of the
Constitution of
United
the United
States
States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the
and the
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
and I
that I
take this
take
obligation freely
freely
without any mental reservation
without any
without
mental
any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or
or
purpose of
purpose of
evasion,
evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties
the
upon
duties
which
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you and welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Escondido. Woo!
Yay.
Yay.
We would have had a big spread, cake and stuff in person, but All right, that brings us to presentations. And first, we're going to have a presentation by Ryan Domino. For the fiscal year 2020/2021 annual comprehensive financial report presentation.
Thank you, Chair Becker. I will like to take a moment to introduce our speaker, Ryan Domino. A key activity of any agency is the completion of their audit and then the preparation of their annual comprehensive financial report. This was our first complete full fiscal year for report. You might remember last year I had just a partial year. I'd like to thank our interim CFO, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer Marie Bercuti for her tireless efforts in working with the auditors in providing them all of the information they need, the documentation, and preparing the schedule. She worked really hard, and her hard work is reflected in the good report we're getting from the auditors. So with that, I will ask Ryan to take over, and he has a short presentation he'll share.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, good afternoon, Chair Becker, members of the board. My name is Ryan Domino. I'm a senior manager with Lance Soul and Lunghard. We're the independent audit firm that has been contracted by CEA to perform the annual financial audit. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully everyone can see this okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So like I mentioned, we have been engaged by Clean Energy Alliance to perform a financial audit and to assist in preparing the annual financial statements. So to that end, we are responsible for obtaining reasonable assurance that the financial statements being presented to you today are accurate and free from material error. And our audit was conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards set forth by the AICPA. And then also the higher level than that, which is government auditing standards. So there's two levels of audit standards that we have to follow, and one's more comprehensive than the other. With respect to reasonable assurance, just as a reminder for those of you who were in attendance in my presentation last year, and for those of you who are new, that means we don't look at every single transaction, but we do look at materially important transactions where if they are wrong, it would change the numbers in such a way that different financial decisions could potentially be made. So a lot of that involves sampling, looking at large transactions, things like that. Other part of our audit process and responsibilities is we do evaluate the internal controls, the policies, and the procedures that CEA has in place to assess the riskier areas of the audit, and to design audit procedures that are appropriate to address those risks and make sure that we are focusing our audit on areas that need more attention than others. During the audit process, management is responsible for the form and content of the financial statements, including all of the disclosures. We assist in putting it together, but ultimately they are management's numbers. They're nothing in there is derived from us, from LSL. And that management is also responsible for designing and maintaining a system of internal control relevant to the financial information. So our audit process is pretty much broken down into two phases. We have an interim phase and a year-end phase. The interim phase happened over the summer, and during this time we reviewed and assessed the internal controls, the policies and procedures that CEA has in place. We performed a risk assessment for the significant transaction classes, and we planned our audit procedures to address our identified risks. The year-end phase, which kind of took place over October and November of this year, is when we actually dive into the numbers themselves and make sure that the amounts that are being reported in the financial statements are correct. Some of the procedures we do are analytical procedures, so that can be things like trend analysis, comparing actual amounts to what we expect them to be, making inquiries of management, and then reading the management's discussion and analysis and statistical information just to make sure it's consistent with the basic financial statements. We also do substantive procedures. So this is things like confirming bank accounts with the banks themselves, just to make sure the balances are accurate. pulling cash receipts, looking at canceled checks, performing a search for unrecorded liabilities to make sure all the liabilities of the agency are properly accrued in the right time period, and then making sure that all the footnotes are complete and the disclosures are accurate. During the reporting phase, which is the kind of the final phase of the audit, that's when we take the information provided to us from management and we put it into basically a generally accepted accounting principle or GAAP compliant format. So we just do the formatting, we make it look, the way it's supposed to look, and ultimately the final product is reviewed and approved by management. So this year is a little bit different from last year's report. You'll notice that it is a complete annual comprehensive financial report. This is the first year that CEA has prepared that for the, hopefully to submit it to the GFOA for the Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So there are 3 sections to this report, whereas I believe in last year there were only 2. So this year we have the introductory section, which is an unaudited section. It contains background information, the transmittal letter, and other information that is for the reader's benefit of understanding the entity a little more. The financial section is the area that my firm has been engaged to review and audit. So in there, you'll find our auditor's report, management's discussion and analysis, the basic financial statements, and then the footnotes to the financial statements. And then lastly, this is the new section, which was not there last year, and this is the statistical section. And this section provides trend analysis, typically over 10 years. Obviously, more years will be added as CEA engages in activities over the next few years. You'll see that section start to grow. But as of right now, we just have, I think, 2 years of financial information there. So we did all that work to express an audit opinion. The audit opinion is the point of the letter in the middle of the financial section, or I'm sorry, in the beginning of the financial section. We do our audit to obtain reasonable assurance, like I previously mentioned, so we don't test 100% of the transactions, just enough to make us feel comfortable and confident with the amounts. We do have a basis of materiality, so materiality basically is when we consider who the end users are of the financial statements, put ourselves in their shoes, think about what transactions would be important for them, and then using a calculation, we come up with a dollar amount for all the transactions over that dollar amount we test. And that letter that is in the report is unmodified, so that is the highest and best opinion we can render on the financial statements. It means that the information is reliable and accurate in all material respects. Along with the auditor's opinion letter, we issue a couple of companion letters. The first one is our Statement of Auditing Standards 115 or SAS 115 letter. And this is a unique letter for audits subject to government auditing standards. During a government audit, we have to review internal controls and perform tests of compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grants, things like that. Anything that could have a relevant impact on the financial information. So this letter basically documents any sort of internal control findings we would come across or any sort of non-compliance that we would come across. There's no opinion rendered here because we don't actually audit it, but we evaluate it and provide feedback in this letter. So I'm happy to report that for the fiscal year 2020-21, there were no reportable findings. So we had no internal control weaknesses or significant deficiencies or non-compliance with laws, regulations, and those kinds of items. And then the last companion letter we issue along with our report is the audit communication letter, which is more or less a written summary of the presentation I'm giving you today. It talks about any sort of significant or unusual transactions that happened during the year, of which there were none. If there were any difficulties encountered during the audit, again, none. Corrected or uncorrected misstatements, everything looked fine. We didn't have any sort of journal entries. We had no disagreements with management over the application of accounting principles, and really no other audit findings or management discussions to report. The last part of that letter just talks about other matters, which primarily are upcoming accounting pronouncements, And of all the ones that are new and upcoming, there probably aren't too many that are affecting CEA at this point. So in short summary, we were engaged to perform a financial audit. We rendered an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion. We had no findings related to internal control, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance was noted with relevant compliance requirements. So that is my presentation. If there are any questions about the audit or the letters, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much for that comprehensive report. Let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any hands up. So I think that was all good news. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next year.
Hopefully.
All right. Thank you for that presentation. And then we're on to our second presentation. We're going to have an update from Community Advisory Committee Chair Dwight Warden.
Thank you, Chair Becker. And Barbara, would you like to say anything, or shall I just jump right in? Where'd Barbara go?
Here I am. I was muted. Thank you, CAC Chair Warden. Yes, this our last meeting, which the committee met the beginning of December, and was their last meeting of the current work plan year. And we have such a great committee. They're very enthusiastic. They were patient with us as we got up and running off the ground. They're very excited for the coming year. I don't want to take the wind out of the chair warden's sails, but I'm very pleased and feel honored to work with such a passionate group of people who truly believe in the mission of Clean Energy Alliance and really want to help us achieve our goals. And they bring such a wealth of knowledge and information that I look forward to the coming year. So,
thank you, Barbara. I'll just quickly go over some of the highlights and note that at your next meeting in your workshop, you'll be getting a more detailed report of recommendations from the advisory committee. But the committee was informed and discussed briefly the joining of Escondido and San Marcos, and they were very positive and excited on both of those fronts and look forward to those two cities appointing their representatives to the advisory committee and getting to work with those folks. We then had a review of what are the key items in the climate action plans for the member agencies to see what programs those identify. And then Ms. Boswell gave us a report on what other CCEs and CCAs throughout the state are doing in terms of programs that they're promoting. And then we had an open discussion about those and pros, cons, and threw in a couple of other ideas. Left Barbara with a summary, and I think that's all going to be written up and be coming back to your board. But it's everything from potential subsidies for e-bikes to programs for disadvantaged communities to electrical vehicle items, rooftop solar items. It's everything across the board that's being done throughout the state that we're looking at. And there are a lot of things that the committee identified that looked very attractive and looked, frankly, not very expensive and pretty easy to do. Some of them are a little bit heavier furniture to take on, but those will all be coming to you from the committee at your next meeting. The other thing that we spent some time talking about was the committee's work program and schedule. As you know, for the preceding year, we met only quarterly, and we skipped one of those because we doubled up to help with the launch. But I think we're likely to come back and request, at least in the beginning of the year, that we meet more frequently than quarterly for two reasons. One, to be able to get up to speed with the new appointees from the two new cities. And second, to be able to work some more on this idea, these concepts on what kind of programs the committee would like to recommend to your board. So that's it. It was all a good meeting. And as Barbara says, there's plenty of good wind from that group to go around for everybody. They're raring to go.
Well, that's exciting. So we'll bring this back in January, not at the next meeting, right? Not to the December.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not the special one at the end of the month, January.
Okay, great. And Barbara, you have already figured out how to get Escondido and San Marcos their applications to send out to the community to get that going?
we'll actually be discussing that in January as well. We'll
Oh, okay.
announce vacancies and then open up the application period.
Great. Okay, good. We'll look forward to seeing that in January. Thank you so much, Dwight.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, do we have any public comment today?
We have no requests to speak.
All right, that brings us to the consent calendar. We have 2 items. Would any of the board members wish to pull any of those items? Otherwise, we can entertain a motion. Move
So
those items.
moved.
Yeah,
I'll second.
all right, perfect. All right. Call for the vote.
Member Insco,
Aye.
Member Drucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Babatel,
Aye.
Chair Becker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. All right. New business, item number 3, and this is adopting a resolution for the City of San Marcos to become a member of the Joint Powers Agreement and a member of CEA, and to also find it that action is exempt from CEQA. And I will turn it over to our CEO.
Thank you, Chair Becker. Yes, this is the next step in our expansion that we've been working on since even before CEA was launched. I think the cities were working together and trying to figure out how they could bring community choice energy to their communities in the most efficient manner. I'm going to share my screen. I do have a presentation to share with the board. So to recap, the recommended action, or what's before the board for consideration, is adoption of our resolution 2021-015, authorizing the City of San Marcos to become a party to the Joint Powers Agreement and a member of CEA. And a second action is to find that the addition of the City of San Marcos to the Clean Energy Alliance is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, as it involves organizational and administrative activities of government that will not indirect physical changes on the environment, and therefore is not considered a project. By way of background, through its evaluation process, San Marcos has concluded that joining Clean Energy Alliance was the best option for bringing community choice energy to its community. And that city, along with the cities of Escondido and, our founding members of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach did, quite a thorough evaluation process in determining what the best way to bring community choice to their communities was. San Marcos has taken the following actions related to joining CEA, including adopting their resolution to join Clean Energy Alliance. They've adopted their ordinance to establish a community choice aggregation or energy program. They also provided load data to CEA so that we could evaluate the impact of serving the related energy load in their community. With that evaluation, an assessment report was prepared and was presented to the board at our last meeting, along with that of Escondido. The analysis did conclude that adding San Marcos had a positive impact on CEA. And I'll provide the snapshot summary of that assessment report. San Marcos, the City of San Marcos, we would be serving approximately 36,820 customers, as compared to approximately 55 or just under 60,000 for the prior CEA. That doesn't include Escondido. We do need to adjust that. And we would be serving over 352,000 megawatt hours for the community. From a financial perspective, we would be anticipating beginning serving customers in April of 2023. And since our fiscal year ends in June, the FY 2023 column is really just a partial year. So if we focus on 2024 and 2025, you can see that the revenues would be sufficient to cover our costs and result in a net operating margin of 4.7 million in the first year, 6.4 in the second. We have a policy of setting aside 5% of revenue into a reserve. And after taking into account the reserves, we'd be at 3 million net surplus in 2024 and 4 million in 2025. So positive from a financial perspective. As part of of expanding service into new areas, we are required to prepare an amended implementation plan, which the board did direct staff to prepare, and had already previously directed that we include San Marcos, contingent on San Marcos adopting their resolution, which they did do. We will be bringing that implementation plan amendment back to the board at our next regular meeting, which is December the 30th. And it will include San Marcos in that implementation plan. Based on the conclusions of the assessment report and the actions taken by the San Marcos City Council, staff recommends CEA adopt resolution 2025 and makes related CEQA findings. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions? It does not look like it. And with that, I will go ahead and move staff recommendation. I can have a second.
Second.
Perfect. Call for the vote.
Member Drucker,
Yes.
Member Insco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bob Patel,
Aye.
Chair Becker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, item number 4, receive an update on proposed changes to SDG&E net energy metering tariffs and consideration of sending a letter commenting on the proposed changes. Back to you, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Chair Becker. Our regulatory counsel, Ty Tosda, will be assisting with this presentation. I'll make some opening comments and then turn it over to him for his more thorough presentation, technical presentation. This item was requested at our last meeting that the board receive an update on the current proceeding underway at the Public Utilities Commission. They're considering making changes to the net energy metering tariffs, and that impacts those customers who install systems such as rooftop solar. And it establishes the way that they are compensated and how they're charged for energy. At the request of the board asks that we bring the update and that the board consider drafting a letter or sending comments to the PUC with regards to those changes. And I will now stop my presentation so that Mr. Tosdahl can share his and get into the technical aspect.
Thank you, Ms. Boswell. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you, Ms. Boswell. Wanted to report back to you all as requested about a proposed decision in the net energy metering proceeding before the California Public Utilities Commission. You may have heard some things about this proposed decision. It's received a lot of media attention and has been the subject of a lot of, I think, debate over this past week. It was just issued earlier this week. I do want to be clear that this proceeding is designed to establish rates for utility customers who are on the NEM schedule. And I want to point out that and remind everybody that CEA has its own NEM schedule that won't be directly affected by this decision. Nevertheless, since there are so many solar customers that participate in utility NEM rate programs, this decision, these decisions do affect large number of solar customers and the solar industry, and they also indirectly affect us in the sense that customers may be looking to compare the utility NEM rates with the CCA NEM rates in order to make an informed decision about which program to participate in. So without further ado, I will get into this decision. As I mentioned, it was issued earlier this week. The Public Utilities Commission has fully endorsed in this decision a couple of utility arguments. And I think a lot of what is contained in the decision follows from that endorsement. And so the utilities have been arguing over the past couple of years, and some have been arguing even longer, in fact, that there's a substantial cost shift in the way that net energy metering rates had been established in the past. And so essentially, The argument was that the compensation was too generous and that other customers were in effect subsidizing rooftop solar owners. The other argument was that the rates disadvantage low-income customers in various ways, in that low-income customers weren't incentivized by the rate, the pre-existing rates that had been established, and that there was no mechanism for a lot of low-income customers to install systems. So what follows from that, I think, is a number of things that I'm going to talk about. There are a number of changes here from NEM, previous NEM decisions. Just so everybody is aware, just one further clarification about terminology. There were two previous iterations of NEM, and so the people are referring to this decision as NEM 3.0. So what we're talking about is NEM 3.0. There was an NEM, obviously, an NEM 1.0 and an NEM 2.0 that were decided previously. So one of the major things that was changed here is export compensation, which is the value that's placed on power that rooftop solar owners send back to the grid when they're in a surplus generating phase. And so the commission has endorsed a different methodology. The rate used to be based on the retail rate that customers pay. Now it's based on what's called an avoided cost calculator, which is a technical cost calculator to estimate certain avoided costs that would be needed to be paid to improve the grid if these rooftop solar owners weren't exporting energy. The result of that, practically speaking, is a very substantial reduction in export compensation, and estimated to be as much as 20 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And so I think it's fair to say that if this decision is ultimately approved, there will be substantially reduced incentives to move forward with rooftop solar under the NEM program. So there's also, the commission recognized that they did want to provide some incentives. So there are market transition credits available in PG&E and Edison territory. Unfortunately, they're not available in SDG&E territory. Under this proposed decision, the logic behind that is the intended payback period for a rooftop solar owner in this decision, as a goal, was set at 10 years. And this is a little bit counterintuitive, but bear with me. SDG&E's rates are historically very high, some of the highest in the state and some of the highest in the country. And so because the NEM, the previous compensation, had these high rates and the payback periods tend to be shorter. So because the payback periods in SDG&E territory were a bit, fell under that 10-year mark, they decided that no further incentive was necessary. So there's obviously a disparity here between what's going on in PG&E territory and SDE territory and SDG&E territory. Nevertheless, they did exempt non-residential customers as well from these market transition credits. Because the thrust of the decision was to eliminate cost shifts and better address low-income customers, so that they reasoned that there was no further incentive necessary for other than the export compensation for non-residential. So I do want to pause on this for one more moment. These market transition credits are only going to be available for 4 years. So this incentive is pretty limited, and we're going to go on to a next slide, and you'll see there's some fixed charges. And if people can just try and keep some of these, some of these values in mind, we're looking at a market transition credit of between $0 to $5.25 per kilowatt. So this is based on the size of your system, the size of the rooftop solar system. The average size is about 6 kilowatts. And so just if you keep these values in mind a little bit, in addition to the market transition credit, there's a monthly grid participation charge. This is a fixed fee based on the size of the system. And for residential owners, it's $8 a kilowatt. So if your size of your system is, the average size 6 kilowatts, then you're looking at a $48 monthly fixed charge, which is very substantial. Again, low-income customers were exempted. Non-residential customers were exempted from this as well. But that is fixed charges have been something that the utilities have been advocating for some time, and advocated for during the previous NEM decision, and they are rejected. And they're here now though. And so the proposed decision recommends an $8 kilowatt charge. So the eligible rate schedules for NEM 3 participants is very limited. On NEM 2, customers were permitted to, they were required to be on time of use, but they were permitted to elect the time of use schedule. And there are a range of time of use schedules that are designed for different types of customer types. So the SCG&E rate schedule that was identified as EV2TOU 5. And the rationale here was to try and provide signals to customers. Time of use rates vary during the time of the day, obviously. And so the logic here was they wanted a highly differentiated TOU schedule so that customers would be strongly incentivized to supply power back on the grid when it was needed during the peak times, for example, and then, presumably be able, if they're able to, consume power from the grid when it's at its cheapest and during the off-peak periods and when there's less stress on the system. So I do think that this is fairly restrictive and may further reduce the participation. Grandfathering is always an important subject in NEM. The status of the previous NEM customers is always a big issue in these decisions. So residential customers on NEM 1 and NEM 2 will be required to transition to NEM 3 15 years after the interconnection date. And so the interconnection date is when you actually connected your system to the grid. And so thinking that through it a little bit, the implications of that, it means that, customers every year, some number of customers from NEM 1 and NEM 2 that established, their interconnection some time ago will be transitioned over to NEM 3. There are some benefits for voluntarily transferring over. There's a storage rebate, which is $20 a watt hour. And so that is, that is potentially significant. We're going to talk a little bit about the implementation schedule here, which is a very long, attenuated implementation schedule. But I did want to address one other issue related to this, and that is and sorry, the slide is wrong. For the future NEM 2 customers, because of this long implementation period, there's still going to be some people who submit applications in the near term and are placed on NEM 2. They had a 20-year legacy period, and it's replaced with a 15-year legacy period. So they're reducing the time, and correction on the slide, they're reducing the time that customers' rates are locked in. So finally, just wanted to talk a little bit about the implementation here. The implementation schedule is truly a long implementation schedule, and this is somewhat rare. You usually don't see this type of thing, but I think the commission is being mindful here about what a radical change is being made. And so they, not only are they wanting to set up a process that is, logical and clear in terms of implementation and doesn't leave room for doubt, but also, I do think that there's an attempt here to create some sort of softer transition. So 30 days after the decision, there'll be an advice letter with the tariff. 45 days after, we'll get the tariff sheets and a detailed description of rate elements. 100 days after that, the Energy Division is supposed to dispose of the advice letters. 120 days after the decision, the NEM 2.0 tariff sunsets. And then 12 months after the decision, the utilities are supposed to complete implementation. Part of the reason for this long implementation schedule is the fact that the IOUs are going through billing system upgrades. That includes SDG&E, obviously. That subject has come up a few times. So I have one more subject I want to address, and then I will hand over the microphone back to you all. There is an unusual aspect of this decision in that the assigned commissioner for this decision, Martha Guzman Aceves, has just been appointed by President Biden to lead up an EPA administrative post. What I understand is that she is leaving the commission on December 20th, next week. And so she is not going to be present for the vote, which is scheduled to take place presently on January 27th at the Public Utilities Commission. And unless the governor, quickly appoints a new commissioner and that commissioner is confirmed before, and sworn in before January 27th, it looks like the commission will be, voting on this matter with 4 members instead of 5. So there are, that is just an interesting development that I wanted to pass on related to this. So with that, happy to take any questions and discuss further steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, board members? I have one. So when they raise these rates on the NEM customers, are they lowering rates on everybody else, or are they just saying, no, we need to raise them to cover our costs?
Yeah, no, they're not. There was no corresponding reduction in anybody else's rates or anything of that nature, Ms. Becker.
Okay. Well, it's really disappointing. I mean, we have, we already in California, we're requiring every new home builder to go ahead and put solar panels on. We've also in Solana Beach now required non-residential new builds and also substantial remodels. So I think it really does affect us, and I would be happy to support a letter to that respect. Councilmember Drucker.
Yeah. Is there currently any type of distribution fee paid by the solar rooftop people?
So if you're on NEM 1 or NEM 2, you're allowed to net your distribution charges. If you generate enough power, you're allowed to net out some of your transmission distribution charges that way. NEM 3 does not have that provision, so you won't be able to. You'll still have to pay transmission and distribution charges, full stop.
Yep. Okay.
And those have gone up, right?
Yes, they have gone up like substantially over the every year for the past several years.
All right. Vice Chair Bhat Patel.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say that I'd be in support of sending in a letter as well. I do think it's really important to make sure that we're voicing why it's necessary to do as much as we can for climate stabilization. And this is one of those things, right? I mean, folks throughout North County have been putting in solar for as long as we know. And I understand the equity piece and the equity argument. I know that that's come up quite a bit. I think we do need to figure out that piece, but this is not the way to do it. I think there is definitely a different solution. And I know I've been talking to folks in that space to really understand what we can do to ensure that those that may not have the opportunity to put in solar right now, what we can do to make sure, not necessarily CEA, but in general, what we can do to make sure to provide that opportunity for folks. So I do think that we need to weigh in. I know our city is considering potentially, once this is adopted, to also submit separately a letter as well to ensure that this is received prior to the other hearing. So I'm definitely in full support of submitting something. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Councilmember Drucker, did you have another question?
No, I have a comment, which is, I agree that this is not the correct proposal. One of the things though I do agree with is the concept of having distribution. People with rooftop solar paying for distribution, not getting the credit. Del Mar has its own water utility. And I see this as similar, that if a person doesn't use any water, they still get charged for all the metering costs, all the costs for all of the infrastructure to get water to their place of work or their or residence. And I think SDG, all the utilities do need to have that ability to charge for distribution, not as a credit, but charging people for the concept that, you're part of the grid. Unless you're not part of the grid, then you shouldn't have to pay for it. This current proposal doesn't do that really. I mean, it just basically disincentivize anybody to have rooftop solar. In the future, I'm hoping that the PUC will figure that out. And but I would agree that we should send a letter in not supporting this current proposal.
We need a motion on this? Oh, yes, Councilmember Inscoe.
Yes, Chair Becker, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I'm just trying to absorb being so new, but many of the comments I would certainly support, including Councilmember Drecker's most recent comment. I just wondered if that vote with 4 people on that commission or committee can go through with just the 4 votes, or if it somehow might be slowed down somehow.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Inscoe. The commission has a quorum with 4, so they can move forward with a vote. But nevertheless, I think it does create a little bit of added uncertainty and some maybe perhaps an opening for opponents in the solar industry to advocate for a full commission vote, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Sure.
All right, and do we need a motion for this, or was that just providing direction for you?
I assume we need a motion, so I would move that we send a letter. Commenting.
Very good. And was that a second, Chair?
Yeah.
Vice Chair?
I'll continue to second.
Okay, great. All right, call for the vote.
Thank you. Member Inscoe,
Aye.
Member Drucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Chair Becker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're at board member requests for future agenda items. Does anybody have anything? I do have something. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, Chair, you go first.
Okay, so I know that our CEO, Barbara Boswell, has been working diligently for the last 2 years, and we have not had any kind of an evaluation. So I'm wondering if I could get support from anybody to put this on a closed session item, and we could put that in January, I would say, not the next meeting, but a closed session item, maybe to do an evaluation and discussion, since it's actually been probably a little over 2 years. So is that something that you all are interested in?
That makes sense.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and do that when that fits in the schedule. All right, and so we do have we have our regular board meeting on December 30th, and a week from now at 2 p.m. And this is going to be a very important meeting. So Madam CEO, would you like to kind of give us a preview of that meeting so the public can know to attend?
Thank you, Chair Becker. It's 2 weeks from now. Let's not speed past
Sorry.
Christmas quite that fast.
Okay.
Through the holidays, but it is smack in the middle of holiday season, and it is our regularly scheduled meeting, and we do plan to have that meeting. We do have a number of important items. We've just discussed our implementation plan amendment, which is to be considered on the 30th. We're required to file that with the California Public Utilities Commission by January 1st in order for us to be able to begin serving customers in 2023. So it will be important for us to meet that deadline. You also may have heard that San Diego Gas and Electric is in the process of finalizing their rates, and they have it's anticipated that the PUC will approve their rates at the end of December, and they'll have new rates effective January 1. You know that our rates are tied to their rates with the goal of providing a discount. So we will be looking at the impact of that rate change at our December meeting. So we do want to encourage anyone watching to please please participate. Please join us, even though it's the right near the end of the holidays and New Year's. But we have some important things to take up with the board at that meeting.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. All right. Well, that concludes our meeting, and I will see you December 30th. Everyone have a happy holiday. Safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Bye. And